What's good, YouTube? It's me, everybody, Squid, back in another Squid video. Today, I want to talk about Tearlaments because this deck is evidently good again. It's somehow one of the top tier decks after the recent reckoning on the ban list where Arisehart got destroyed, and that was basically their largest enemy. So in YCS Dortmund, to the shock of a lot of players, this actually was the top deck after the Swiss rounds. In the top 64, the mass majority of decks, the top deck was Tearlaments, and this had an amazing conversion rate because a lot of players took advantage of Tearlaments, just realizing that this deck was good and started piloting it. And even though the names are at 1, we still have 3 Planet, we still have a plethora of other engines and toys that are coming out in Agov as well, which we're going to cover today in this video. But mostly I wanted to make this because we should talk about some of the different engines for the deck. It doesn't seem like the deck is solved by any means. A lot of the players have been experimenting with different cards here and there in YCS Dortmund, and as well as the regionals too, and I think there's so many different options with the deck, so I think we should definitely explore and take a look. And I actually have a list of cards here. Starting off at the top is actually KASHTIRA FENRIR. Now, a lot of players did actually play this card, but there were certain players who decided not to take advantage of FENRIR. FENRIR in this deck is especially useful because you can just search a Tearlaments KASHTIRA for free, and on top of that, you get, well, basically a FENRIR that stays on the field, right? FENRIR is really, really amazing in a mid-range grindy type metagame where you can banish cards. Card effects have to resolve on the field, so just being able to banish and remove things is really, really handy. And on top of all that, you get one of the best cards in the deck for free, which is Tearlaments KASHTIRA to mill by banishing either KASHTIRA FENRIR itself when it hits a grave or other Tearlament cards in your graveyard that you happen to mill. Now, why I particularly like FENRIR as a card is the fact that it actually punishes a lot of things that are good against this deck. For example, the Beastials. So if someone drops a Bestial Magnamut or a Druid Swarm, which are probably one of the most popular sided cards right now, just because there's so many dark decks that have seen a resurgence in the format, this allows you to single-handedly take care of that issue. Obviously, they get the 1-for-1 trade with your tier name, but FENRIR allows you to get a free activation on your turn that you normally wouldn't be able to do because your opponent doesn't control any monsters, and banish the monster that they summon out of their hand. So being able to trade off for a Bestial Druid Swarm is especially nice because they are still going to be able to proc the Druid Swarm on their turn and potentially use it as a body and an interruption. So the sending effect, obviously, in the graveyard, which we're referring to. And that's why I really like FENRIR as a card, because it can deal with that one card that people are siding in the form of Bestials, and does it really effectively. So in my opinion, I quite like this card. Now, on the other hand, it is a little bit weird sometimes. This card does actually clash. Obviously, if you're siding Bestials yourself or playing them in Tearlaments and you have a fat Druid Swarm on the board, then the FENRIR is just going to be dead. So it kind of has a little bit of drawbacks there. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend maxing out on FENRIR. But the nice thing is you can actually play, in addition to Perler Rhino, is the Wraithos with a copy of Terraforming, which effectively allows you to play 2 copies of Wraithos in your deck, and then that just guarantees that you're going to see your FENRIR, whether you play 1 or 2 copies, which I think is probably more correct than playing 3 because it can clash sometimes. Not to mention, like, some of the tier names like Tearlaments, Havnish, just putting bodies on board, that kind of clashes as well. But I'm personally a firm advocate of this card in Tearlaments in general, just because it has so much synergy and it does help you push through a lot of things that are annoying in the metagame, like the Bestials. Next, let's talk about Diviner the Herald. This card is a single-handedly amazing starter because you're able to resolve it and then instantly mill 5 by singing an Yugioh or a Kelbeck. And on top of all of that, like, even in the mirror match, it's not horrible because you can also send these shufflers, right? In the mirror match, generally, you don't really want to mill your opponent because they could actually get a lot of advantage. If their mills are better than ours, then we're probably losing the game, unless we have something where we have to mill them, or we're under like Abyss Dweller, so our effects trigger and theirs don't, or if you have like a Keldon Graveyard. But it kind of gives you that option. You also have the option to potentially play Elder Entity Intis as a pop. I mean, chances are you're probably not going to be able to fit this in just because the Tearlaments extra deck is so freaking tight. But the other nice thing about Diviner the Herald being a tuner is that you can actually go into Baron de Fleur really easily, because when we send one of the Yugioh or Kelbecks, Diviner becomes level 6, and in tandem with either Rhino Heart or potentially a Sheeran being a level 4, we can easily make the Baron very, very easily, and then that's just a crazy Omni Negate that you guys know what it does. Even Baron being able to pop your own Soliax or pop your own tier monsters to trigger the effects after the fact is amazing. But personally, I'm not a huge fan of Diviner in general, just because it's very, very susceptible and volatile to cards that disrupt a lot of cards in the format. Basically every hand trap. We're talking like Ash Blossom, Infinite Impermanence, you know, any card that says negate the monster's effect. does so much against Diviner that it kind of like you waste your normal summon on Diviner when it could have been used on something like a Rhinoheart. So I'm not sure, I'm not entirely convinced if I like Diviner personally, but I still acknowledge that it's good enough card that you can definitely play it. It seems to be on and off with the OCG players as well. But the other nice thing is you can actually revive it with Elf at Home, aka Cross Sheep. When you do fusion summon to a zone that he points to, you get to revive a level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard, so you can easily bring back the Diviner, which also gets the effect on the special summon to strengthen your board by milling or sending a shuffler to the grave. So that's just another nice thing about Diviner. But personally, I'm not fully convinced. I would love to hear your guys' arguments for or against this card before we decide, before the deck's solved. Next is a Danger Engine. So like Danger Nessie, as well as the other ones like Tsuchinoko, I think, or whatever they happen to play. Or I think it's actually just Mothman, not Tsuchinoko, because Mothman is a level 4. So that allows you to go into your Redoer a lot easily. I quite like these cards, but the issue is the package is a little bit thick. You do have to play multiple copies of Nessie and ideally one or more Mothmans to search off of the Nessie. And at some point, it just makes it feel like these cards have kind of diminishing returns. For example, if you're under something like an Abyss Dweller and you're kind of just using your dangers, they're more or less just like bodies that you summon. You're not really getting pluses by discarding the cards. And they're only really good, in my opinion, when you actually proc the effects of the cards that you discard, which doesn't always happen, especially in a in a game where there are also other negates, like the DDK High King Caesar, which these cards kind of just play into, right? Like if you're playing against Unchained and they have High King Caesar on board and you're using your danger effects to kind of trade 2 for 1, it's not going to feel great. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of dangers currently in the metagame, but I can definitely see them being very, very good because it allows you to go super wide with your board and either make huge link plays. And guys, we are getting a lot of new cards in Agov like SP Little Knight, so being able to go into it very easily with the dangers is so cool. So I think the dangers might be a little better after Agov drops in about a week or so, but I'm not really convinced still because of the existence of disruption cards like Wave King Caesar that kind of puts a nail in the coffin for the dangers. Not to mention, if they do hit your Mothman, sometimes that can feel really, really bad because your opponent also gets to draw a card, discard a card, and if it's a mirror match, you're probably going to feel some pain if they discard something like a name or a shuffler. So that's my thought on dangers. King of the Swamp is a controversial one. We all know there's a very well-known player out there who said King of the Swamp is bad, and somehow he got hate on the non-Squidio, the video that he made. But it turns out that some players were still playing King of the Swamp, and then others, a lot that actually topped the YCS Dortmund, were not playing King of the Swamp. So I would love to hear your guys' opinions on this. Personally, I am an advocate of the card because when I think about Tearlaments, I like to play cards that are good mills and good draws because that makes sense, right? Like you're relying on your mills to basically win the game, right? It's an aspect of RNG, but you also don't want to brick on bad mills. You would rather draw cards that you can also play in addition to them being good mills. So in my opinion, a card like King of the Swamp, it's a good mill. It's a great mill, allowing us to go into Rukalos or Grapha, as well as go into a polymerization so we can make cool stuff like Guardian Chimera, which is just insane to break past the board going second. So in my opinion, it's good mill and it's good draw. I quite like this card still, but I know it's kind of controversial now that a lot of players are experimenting without playing King of the Swamp, and you can actually sort of focus on milling your other cards and kind of making disruption like Dragostapelia instead of something like Rukalos. But I quite like the card. I would love to hear opinions for or against. Which reminds me, there's another King of the Swamp, Beast King of the Swamp, the OG King of the Swamp. Some players are playing this because it's a level 4, so you can easily make something like an Abyss Dweller or a Redoer by using it as your normal summon. I don't really like the card because I feel like it's a terrible draw, but it's a good mill. Like we just talked about, King of the Swamp is a good draw. Well, it's not a good draw, but it's not a bad draw, right? It's playable. You get polymerization, it's an extender, but Beast King of the Swamp is just Beast King of the Swamp. He doesn't do anything in your hand, so in my opinion, I don't really like this card. But yeah, I think there are better options out there. Next, let's talk about Revolution Synchron. This is one that people kind of hyped up in the OCG, but then they quickly dropped. It does allow you to go access into stuff like Ancient Fairy Dragon to special summon a monster from your hand, as well as blow up a field spell to search, but you do require a huge extra deck. You are going to be playing things like Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, and because of the fact that we don't actually have Chaos Ruler, there's not really a huge argument to play Revolution Synchron in my opinion, but you can catch some opponents off guard by surprise using Black Rose Dragon or something of the sort, but in my opinion, it's just not that great of a card at the current time. It is a level 3, so if you do normal summon it with the KASHTIRA FENRIR, you can make a Baron to Fleur really easily, and then search a Tearlaments KASHTIRA and resurrect it as a level 1 to make another level 8 Synchro, so that's something you can kind of keep in the back of your head, I guess. Destrudo is a card that I've been thinking about playing because it does kind of fit the criteria of being a good draw as well as a good mill. It's an extender if you draw it, and in the graveyard, it's just a free extender synchro that can also be brought back as a level 4 if you use it on a level 3, and then you can overlay it, or you can just go into a synchro, but it does require you to probably play a synchro 7 like Black Rose Dragon or Ancient Fairy Dragon, which I'm not super convinced because the extra deck is super tight, but there could actually be a good argument to playing this card as a 1-up just to even go into your link plays or something of the sort, because now that we're getting SP Little Knight, Dark is just a lot better now more than ever, so this could be an argument, not even playing a synchro, just bring back Destrudo for a link play instead. That could definitely be something that we can consider, right? So I quite like this card, actually, now that I think about it from that perspective. It kind of has a brother, I guess. Destrudo has a brother in the form of ZEPHYROS, because these cards kind of go hand in hand, that they bring themselves back from the graveyard. But the thing with ZEPHYROS is it's not great of a draw, and there's not a lot of good cards to bounce. Like, do you really want to bounce back your own planet when you would rather have it on the board so you have the popping effect during your opponent's turn? You wouldn't want to bounce something like a Scream either, right? There are not a lot of monsters you want to bounce either, so personally, I'm not a huge advocate of this card. I don't think it's good enough to run at the moment. But if you're playing a designated Blackwing build where you're also playing cards like the Black Feather Rage Dragon, I believe his name is, the one that allows you to mill 5 cards, then that could definitely be something that you consider playing alongside ZEPHYROS, because you do proc the effect to mill 5 when you do bring back ZEPHYROS from your graveyard by paying 4. The Destiny Hero engine is a lot of cards that a series of cards that have been, I think, popular in a lot of decks because it does allow you to instantly go into a Beatrice. How it works is you would trigger a tier name in the graveyard and then shuffle back Malicious alongside the tier to make the Destiny Hero Dangerous, which is a level 6 that allows you to discard a card to Foolish that same copy of Malicious, banish the Malicious, and overlay for Beatrice. Beatrice is really nice because you can also send things like the Zombie World Girl against decks like Flu to search for a Zombie World, Necrold Banshee, and it allows you to send exactly what you want. Like, Tearlaments have to mill a lot, and sometimes that aspect of RNG can work against you, whereas Beatrice allows you to actually send the card you want. In addition to that, you can also pair Malicious with other level 6s, like Bystials, to go into Beatrice in a tight spot. I'm not sure if this is that great because you do have to invest some resources. You do have to discard a card from your hand, and when we don't have like any of the Exchange of the Spirits like Agido, Kalbak to discard, sometimes it can be a costly discard, and if they do hit you with an Imperm or something of the sort, that can be quite bad because we're losing a lot of resources. But the other thing is Mali is not that great of a draw, right? It fits the bill of a great mill, but drawing it is not the greatest. Like, we do have to get in the graveyard somehow, either with a Shirin or with a Polymerization, but I'm not fully convinced about Malicious. But that being said, Beatrice is just such an amazing card in general that I think, honestly, this is probably a ban-worthy card at some point in the game, right? If we do get some insane ways to make this really easily. But at the current moment, I think it's such a strong card that there could be some argument to playing Mali just for it. But I think there's a lot of spots to dedicate. You do have to dedicate one extra deck spot as well for the Beatrice and for the Dangerous. So those are other things to consider. And the other nice thing is you actually play Denier as well. Some players were playing this because this allows you to recycle the Malicious back to your deck, bring out Denier for free, and then bring out another Mali, so you're getting a free link too. So that does open access to Dark or SP Little Knight when this card does drop. So maybe after Agov, we could revisit the aspect of Malicious. It might just be a staple going forward, but now it's kind of up in the air still, I think. I think it's a good card, but I'm not entirely convinced. But I could see myself definitely playing it for the right event. Now, there's another level 6 that a lot of people are actually experimenting with, and that's actually Unchained Soul of SHYAMA, which is a card that says you can target a card you control, destroy it, or sorry, you can target a fiend monster or a face-down card you control, destroy it, then special summon this card from your graveyard. So it's a great mill. It's obviously a huge brick and a draw, but if you mill it, theoretically, you can pop one of your face-down cards like Suliek or a Scream or whatever you want to trigger, bring itself back as a level 6, and then from there overlay with something like a Bystial or a Malicious to go into Beatrice. I don't like this card because it's a horrible draw. Like, this is an okay mill, there are not a lot of things to pop. We don't really have any fiend monsters to pop, right, guys? We have like maybe a Kaleido Heart that you can actually pop, which is kind of cool synergy there. But apart from that, we have to literally set a card and then pop it and trigger the effect of SHYAMA. And do you always really want to pop your Celiac? Not really. Sometimes you want to leave that on the board. There's more value, right? So it kind of like is a juggling act. I feel like it's not that great of a card, but I could be seeing it being played because it's a level 6 for Beatrice. There's definitely an argument for it. And then next is actually the Horus engine. So a lot of people are actually playing this. Imseti allows you to send himself with another card to add a copy of Pharaonic Sarcophagus and draw a card. While Pharaonic Sarcophagus is on the table, you can bring back the glory of Horus very easily. You could also play the monkey as well, who I believe his name is Happy. So discarding a card with Pharaonic Sarcophagus on the table allows you to bring back Happy as well to go into this bad boy, the Zombie Vampire. Mill 4 cards, bring back 1 card. Obviously, milling 4 is what we want to do, but Zombie Vampire does mill your opponent as well, so that's just one thing to note. In the mirror match, it's probably not ideal, but I can definitely see an argument for playing these cards and maybe multiple copies of Pharaonic Sarcophagus. It does give you huge beaters as well, and Pharaonic Sarcophagus actually has a hidden ability where during the damage step, the first time your Horus monster battles an opponent monster, you can actually send that monster to the graveyard. So this is kind of neat. It bypasses a lot of things, like even Red Eyes Dragoon, this can bypass because it doesn't target. So this does have a added angle, I think, to the ceiling of the deck. It's definitely something we can consider playing, but it is rather huge. You're going to be playing the 4 Horus monsters plus 1 or more Sarcophagus, so that's already 5+ cards. So I don't think there's really value really milling these guys either. If you don't have access to the Sarcophagus in the first place, then milling them is kind of not ideal because they don't do anything until you have the Sarcophagus online, and Sarcophagus is pretty easily countered by things like Cosmic Cyclone. There's even Ash Blossom, like stopping the Imseti's effect in the hand can be really devastating because that's a clean 2-for-1 trade, right? So I don't know if it's good enough, but I think it's something we can definitely test that it's, well, I would say it's good enough, but I don't know if it's that good to run across a 12+ round event where it has diminishing returns. That's my thoughts on the card for now from a glance. I haven't tested it though, so you guys be the judge on that one. And then last but not least, there's the DIABELLESTAR / Sinful Spoils engine. This obviously is like a pseudo engage engine because you're able to add a card that says you can special summon a Jet Synchron from your deck. So any fire level 1 monster. Jet Synchron can be used in tandem with DIABELLESTAR to go into a level 8 Synchro or to go into any other Synchros. Just being able to resurrect himself from the graveyard as well by discarding a card is kind of neat. But I personally don't really like how we do not have Chaos Ruler, which was the main reason you would play this in the OCG. Now that we don't have any good level 8 Synchros, is there any argument to play the DIABELLESTAR stuff with a bunch of other cards? Remember, this is a pretty big engine as well. This is probably at least 5 or 6 cards, and I think it's, yeah, 6+ cards. So there's not really a good argument to really play it, in my opinion, at the current moment, but I could be proven wrong. There are some other Snake Eye stuff, like Sinful Spoils, cards that we can take advantage of. Just even searching the Subversion, going second to get rid of an annoying monster could be something to consider. But personally, I don't really like the engine just because we don't have any good level 8 Synchros. So until that changes, that's my thoughts on that engine. So yeah, that's about it for the Tearlaments stuff. If you guys have any things that you disagree with or anything that you think will actually help Tearlaments, let us know in the comments below. Other than that, we'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.